But most often we skip the step that actually makes meaningful change possible. And you guessed it, that is awareness. Because here's the truth. You can't change what you are unwilling to honestly examine. Welcome to the Bounce Back Black Woman podcast. I'm Dell, coach, author, mom, and your sister along this journey of healing, growth, resilience, and living more intentionally. As Black women, we know all too well that life can break our hearts in more ways than one. But here in this space, we heal, grow, rebuild, and bounce back together. Because it's not just you. It's not just me. It's us. Hey there, my friend, and welcome back to Bounce Back Black Woman. You'll remember that in our last episode, we talked about time. Specifically, we talked about the lies that we tell ourselves about time. And I challenged you to consider a pretty difficult question. What would you do, change, or decide if you knew you only had 9 months left to live? As I mentioned in that episode, that question became so important in my own life that it eventually became the foundation for my upcoming book, Ruthless Intentionality. Over the next few episodes, I'm going to be exploring, along with you, some of the ideas that sit at the heart of that message. Because once we stop assuming that we have unlimited time, unlimited days on this earth, a new question arises. How do we make sure that we're living intentionally? Now, if you spent any time reflecting on that question, you probably noticed something. The answers might have come surprisingly quickly. And that's because you already know who matters. You already know what matters to you. You already know the dream that you've been postponing and pushing down the road. You already know the conversation that you've been avoiding, but that you very much need to have. You already know the area of your life that's asking for your attention. And so today I want to talk about something that sits underneath all of that, and that is awareness. Because once we identify what matters most, the next question becomes, are we actually living in alignment with those priorities? And my friend, self-awareness is the only way to make informed and aligned decisions. So today I want to explore the first pillar of ruthless intentionality, awareness. So let's talk about it. One of the most frustrating things about personal growth is that most of us want change before awareness. We want better relationships, better habits, better boundaries, better choices, better emotional health, better careers, better outcomes. But most often we skip the step that actually makes meaningful change possible. And you guessed it, that is awareness. Because here's the truth. You can't change what you are unwilling to honestly examine. Think about it. If you don't recognize a pattern, you can't change it. If I don't recognize a belief, I can't challenge it. If you don't recognize a wound, you can't heal it. If I don't recognize a fear, I can't confront it. Awareness isn't always comfortable. In fact, most of the time, awareness is a bit uncomfortable. And you might ask why. That's because awareness requires us to stop blaming, stop distracting ourselves, and stop pretending. And honestly, that is where many people get stuck. Not because they don't want a better life, but because seeing ourselves clearly can be hard and sometimes painful. Let's talk about two words that make people squirm a lot of the time: honesty and accountability. Now, before anybody gets defensive, I'm not talking about self-criticism. So let's make that really clear. I'm not talking about beating yourself up. I'm talking about telling yourself the truth, admitting the truth about what's working, the truth about what's not working, the truth about what you're avoiding, the truth about what keeps repeating in your life, because each and every one of us has patterns. I hate to break it to you. Every one of us has blind spots. Each of us has areas where we're operating on autopilot, going through the motions. But awareness asks us to get curious enough to notice them. You see, awareness asks questions like, how did I get here? What role have my choices played in where I am? What is it that keeps showing up in my life over and over again? What lessons am I still resisting? Notice that accountability isn't blame. Accountability is ownership. It is recognizing that while we can't control everything that happens to us, we can take responsibility for how we respond. And that, my friend, is empowering, because ownership then creates and opens up options for you, whereas victimhood creates limitations. Now, here's the piece that I think many people miss, and that is curiosity. Because curiosity changes the whole conversation, hands down. Without curiosity, honesty turns into judgment. Without curiosity, accountability turns into shame. I want to say those again. Without curiosity, honesty becomes judgment, and accountability becomes shame. How, might you be asking? Here's what I mean. For example, without curiosity, we ask this: what's wrong with me? Why am I like this? Why can't I get it together? But awareness asks different questions. And through the lens of curiosity, even about ourselves, awareness asks this: I wonder where that belief came from. I wonder what experience shaped that reaction. I wonder what fear is operating underneath this decision that I made. I wonder what it is that I'm still carrying and haven't been willing to face. Can you hear the difference in those questions? One of them condemns and can make you feel pretty bad. The other one seeks understanding. And my friend, understanding is what actually creates the space needed for growth. Because when we become curious, even about ourselves, we stop seeing ourselves as the problem to be fixed and start seeing ourselves as people to be understood. And that is a powerful shift indeed. One of the reasons why awareness matters so much is because you are the only person who truly knows what it's like to be you, to exist in this world as you. Think about that. Other people see the outward pieces of your story. They see your behavior. They see your accomplishments. They see your mistakes. They see your successes and your celebrations. But only you know what it is that keeps you awake at night. Only you know what it is that you have survived. Only you know what it is that you are really afraid of, what you hope for, what you carry each and every day on the inside, and what shaped you to be the person that you are today. My friend, you're the only person living your life from the inside. And if you don't take time to understand yourself, you will spend years making decisions based on assumptions instead of based on awareness. You'll make decisions from old wounds, old fears, old expectations, old programming, and old stories. Not because you're weak, not because you're broken, but because awareness hasn't yet illuminated what is driving the behavior itself. And that is why awareness matters. Because awareness gives us information, and information is what helps us to make aligned decisions for our lives. There's a reason that awareness is the first pillar in my book. And that's because every other pillar that follows it depends on it. Connection requires awareness. Compassion requires awareness. Courage requires awareness, and resilience requires awareness. You can't intentionally build a life that reflects your values if you don't know what those values are. You can't make aligned decisions if you don't understand what it is that's influencing those decisions. And you certainly can't move forward intentionally if you haven't first stopped to understand where it is that you are. Awareness is actually the flashlight, my friend. It helps us see. And once we can see clearly, then we can choose intentionally. One of my favorite scriptures about self-examination comes from Psalm 139, 23 and 24. And it says, "Search me, O God, and know my heart. Test me and know my anxious thoughts. Point out anything in me that offends you, and lead me along the path of everlasting life." My friend, that scripture is one that you can pull out, read it if you need to, before you go to God in prayer, to ask for awareness in your life, in your choices, in your past. I love that scripture because it's an invitation. It is an invitation, a direct invitation to awareness and to honesty and to growth. Notice that David isn't asking God to condemn him. He's asking God to reveal what it is that he can't see on his own. And honestly, that is a beautiful prayer for all of us, because awareness always begins with the willingness to say, "Lord, help me see clearly." Now, there's a flip side to awareness. Awareness can be painful because it often reveals things that we have spent years and sometimes years upon years avoiding. Old wounds, old disappointments, old fears, old stories. And sometimes we're afraid that if we look too closely, we'll discover something that we don't like. But here's the truth, my friend. What we refuse to examine often maintains power over us. Awareness doesn't create the wound. Awareness simply reveals the wound. And once something is visible, healing then becomes possible. So today, my friend, I want to ask you to ask yourself this question. What am I still carrying that may be influencing my decisions today? And then ask yourself this: what belief, fear, pattern, or experience might deserve a closer look? Because self-awareness is not about judging yourself. Remember that. It's about understanding yourself well enough to make informed and aligned decisions. My friend, if you take nothing away from this, hear me when I say that awareness isn't always comfortable, but it is necessary. Because you can't intentionally build a life that reflects what matters most if you don't first understand yourself honestly. Awareness helps us see, and once we see clearly, we can choose differently. We can choose intentionally. We can choose alignment. We can choose growth. And that is where meaningful change begins. And remember, it's not just you. It's not just me. It's us. Well, that's it for today, my friend. I really hope this episode inspired, encouraged, or just plain comforted you. If so, please share it with a friend who might be struggling in her own healing journey. And if you take a moment to leave a quick review on Apple Podcasts, you'll help other women find encouragement through their heartbreak. Remember that God is holding your hand along this journey. And guess what? I'm holding the other. Life is short, so bounce back, Black woman.